So Robert and Lori were my music directors. Lori was the music director at what was High Country Unity, now Unity of Littleton. They were there for our very first Sunday service. And they were there when I left to go to Cincinnati in 2000. So they're my music directors. And one of the things I've discovered in Unity is that when people like me talk about, oh yes, Robert and Lori were my music director, and oh yes, I know Pat Williamson, yes, I started a church with Scott Shell, everybody's going, oh my God, isn't she important? No, I just have lived a long time. I mean, do you know what I mean? I know all of her ministers. Do you know? It's not because I'm some big, grand, important person. It's because Unity is not that large of a denomination. And if you stay in it, and if you're active on a national level, which isn't hard, you just have to show up. It's not like everyone's clamoring for the jobs that exist. Might be like this place. You aren't all clamoring for the jobs, but you are present to what's happening. And as time passes, that makes you a part of many, many different things. And so thank you for finding the video. I expected to just hear it, but I haven't seen Lori for quite a few years now, and having her up there, it was like, She was in Indiana when I was in Ohio. She was taking care of her parents who were in their 90s at that point in time after she and Robert got divorced. So forgive me this digression into my own personal history, but hey, you showed up, and sometimes you just get what you get when you come. Okay, trust. It's an interesting experience, and I'm sure you can confirm that for me, when you're planning a talk and it's, down the road a piece, and you're trying to go, oh God, what is important that I can share? What's up for me? Because the truth is, I can't stand and talk to you about anything that's not a present experience in my own life. If I'm not feeling it, then sure, I have a lot of history and information and words I can tell you, but it's different for me when it's alive. And the concept that's alive for me right now is trust. Because I don't know what's happening in Grand Junction, but in my part of the world, trust is up for me. And it may be up for some of you. And I'm interested in, those of you who haven't had the pleasure of being present when I spoke before, I expect you to do half of the work. So when I ask a question, I really expect you to answer me. And I really expect you to answer me authentically and vulnerably, and to be real with me, because as you've noticed already this morning, it's my intention to be real with you. And I'm interested in what comes to your mind when I say trust. I don't care if it's a definition. I don't care if it's your own experience. What does trust mean to you? Yes, ma'am.
When your emotions lie to you against the truth, and they're telling you, oh, nothing's working out right. This is feeling awful. Oh my goodness, maybe I made a mistake. When your emotions are lying to you, and you stand in that faith of knowing this is the eternal truth, no matter what my feelings are saying right now, I'm going to remember the eternal truth of who I am and whose I am and what is real. That is choosing trust. It may not be in the moment being in a state of trusting, but it's choosing trust.
So that's a really important distinction you made. Trusting versus trust. What else does anybody else have to say about trust?
The word fear came up for me as soon as you said trust.
So the fact that fear comes up when I say trust, tie those two together for me.
I don't know, is this just that maybe I'm afraid to trust and who to trust and what to trust? Oh,
When do you need trust the most?
when you're fearful. Exactly, I think that was it, it was like the, yeah.
Keep talking.
So doubt or doubting Thomas, because there's so much misinformation out there that we are encouraged right now in our culture to be doubtful more often.
And why are we encouraged to be doubtful?
We're not sure that we can trust what's being said or who people are or what might happen next.
Fear.
So we're back to fear again.
Right back there.
Yeah, for me, it's trusting myself. Trusting that my authenticity is right or good enough. Trusting my gut, which I choose to call my higher power, over my brain.
Sure.
And so trust is a real biggie for me. Trusting others, of course, but it's about me being vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
and allowing what happen, happen. And knowing I have support.
So that's a very powerful statement. If I trust, if you trust, I can allow whatever is happening to happen. Yes?
Oh, I was sharing the story about our grandson handing me the birthday package and saying, or showing me his birthday package and saying, I'm going to put this in your room. And with perfect eye contact, he said, and I'm trusting you, Grandma, not to eat. And I would not have, on something like that, of course, it wasn't that important to me to go peek or know, but it was the eye contact and
Mhm.
the trust he was communicating to me that brought about total trust from my point of view.
So do you hear what's in that simple story? Tate trusts his grandmother, and you trust him. And how is that different from when you're not trusting? Who do you not trust? What do you not trust? Sure.
Empirical data that there is unreliability.
That there is unreliability? Oh,
That's what
okay.
I don't trust.
Okay.
What I can't extend trust to, or what I won't continue trusting, is that which has proven itself to be unreliable. So the universe is friendly, your sign says up there, and the universe has proven it is friendly, like repeatedly. So I can trust, okay, this is gonna work out, even though it looks bad right now.
So do you realize how difficult that is?
Every day.
Every day? If I transported you to California, to the Sonoma Valley, and the fire is coming at 90 miles an hour, can you trust? What do you trust in that moment?
Like you trust that your car's going to start.
Sure.
And you can split out of there. You can't trust that the fire's going to jump over you because past experience shows it's going to be at the ground level and at the top tree level, and you need to take action. So you can't. You couldn't be naive and say, "Oh, I trust that the universe will protect me." And you need to take some action in that kind of case.
So, Dave, you brought up another important facet of trust. I tend to call it fantasy trust, dream trust. I can stand here in the middle of the street and I trust that no car will hit me.
So ultimately, you have to trust yourself. You're trusting yourself to make the right decision about other people's trust in you even, or you're trusting your intuition about whether your car is going to start, or whether you can get yourself out of this situation or not. The trust really comes back to trusting yourself.
Okay, trust, quote, means trusting yourself. Deb?
Well, I was thinking in your example about the fire, that would be a really hard time to have trust, because you'd be in so much fear and everything like that. But it's like Janine says, despite everything that's going around you, if you've been practicing the spiritual principles and everything, I have to trust there's one God, it's only good, and that even though everything's burning around me right now, that I am safe, I am whole, I will never be harmed, and that I was thinking about too, everything that's ever happened in my life, it's always come out to the goodness. I mean, no matter how bad things have been, there's always, I've been blessed by it, or there's always goodness that follows and things. And I think that comes from just experience and having been around for a while, seeing that.
So, in unity, we tend to talk about things like the phrase she just used. Trust that there is only good.
I have a comment that I think it's how we define good. Yeah.
Good job. Keep going. Good job.
Because given the scenario of having the fire all around you and it doesn't really look like there's going to be a way out, I think the trust has to be, and I believe this always. I don't act on it always because it's a hard pill to swallow.
Sure.
But for me, it has to do with if I end up being destroyed in this fire, it is the right thing to happen. Yes. And it isn't something that I can control. I can control choices, my own personal choices. I cannot always control outcomes. And so this to me is the ultimate in faith, in my mind.
Or acceptance.
Acceptance.
Perfect. What happens when on a human level you have trusted me and I have betrayed you? How does trust become real again in that situation? So you trusted me. I swore to you that I wouldn't look at the present, or I swore to you that I would be faithful to you for the rest of my life, or I swore to, pick your own scenario. And then I betrayed you. Now what?
If I'm the one in that scenario that Spirit drew to be in your life, then I believe I'm being called upon to be a teacher of love, a teacher of extension of love, a teacher of trust, not a teacher of guilt.
Okay.
So my response, if I am being a teacher of love, could be the very reason why Spirit drew me into your presence to help you learn that, just by me loving anyway, and kind of letting that be a gift to the divine. Putting that energy out there, well, okay, so maybe you took all our money in a business transaction or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's more. So I give that gift to the universe through you. And energetically, letting that go would be my trusting that the universe, like you say, put me in the path of the fire because I'm supposed to get burnt up, so that my response can show a different response than what, Okay, so I think like an ACIMer, right? So I'm gonna say the egoic world would attack back, but I'm being called upon not to attack back.
So what's the difference between trust and gullibility?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Our
Good
part
point.
is using
Yeah.
our smarts, our
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes putting our faith in someone else's hands, and the reward we reap is what we've gained, and that may be not to be so gullible.
That's true. That could be our lesson.
So you are all on the higher plane of trust, and I absolutely support that. Well, those are the words you're speaking to me in that moment. But let's make it human. David?
I was just going to say that I think gullibility is fairly synonymous with the fantasy trust that you talked about earlier. That if some unwell-meaning person comes to you, whether they're a politician or someone who wants a possible romance or whatever it is, and blabs off all this stuff that sounds really, really, really good to you, that sort of thing like that, but, you have to use your smarts, as someone said, to filter out what they said and try to determine whether that they really mean that or not. It's not an easy task to do.
So you get your smarts through your very own experience in this world, which is what I would say, why am I here, is to experience. And we experience, and sometimes we learn from our experiences, and sometimes we don't. But we're here to experience that, so that helps us in some situations with our gullibility, but maybe not always.
But keep in
Maybe
mind-
we have
Go
to
ahead.
struggle again.
But keep in mind that gullibility also has to do with your own beliefs, your own belief system. For example, if someone comes along, you have a certain belief system about something, whether it's right or wrong, or there's probably no right or wrong, but it could be. But anyway, you have your own belief system about something, and someone identifies that and comes along and says the things that you want to hear that fits into your belief system, you're more likely to believe them than if they came along and said something honestly, that was not your belief system, then you say, well, I don't know if I believe that person's really going to do that. Maybe they really are. So, a snake oil salesman comes along with his wagon to the western town and sells the snake oil that's going to cure all your ails and all that kind of stuff like this, and people want to believe it because they have these ailments, they have these spots all over themselves, and this stuff which is made up in different bottles for different cures, but it's all the same material. They want to believe that this is going to help, but it is next.
I just want to go back to your question of what if I betrayed you on a human level? Because when it happened to me, it was absolutely devastating. I mean, every part of me was wounded. And it was before I knew all these spiritual words. And it was before I knew, that there's a different part of me. But in the moment, at that time, it devastated me. I've been betrayed a lot in my life, but for some reason, it was two people at the same time, different situations, and it just, there was no recovery, hardly any recovery. It took a long time to recover from that. So, but again, it was before I knew all this spiritual stuff, and all of these, but.
So do you think that particular set of experiences helped lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, because it was right in the middle of my spiritual awakening, when I was really getting into, it was when I first started Unity and started, and so, yeah, it was absolutely, it was like, looking back now, I can see where it was like the universe going, okay, let me show you what you're believing. Let me show you that you believe that there is a part of you that can be hurt. Whereas in the Course in Miracles, there is no part of you that can be hurt.
So in the absolute,
But in the absolute,
there is no part of us that can be hurt. I don't know about you. I live on a physical world, I walk around in my physical body. I have my physical feelings. So being called to ponder a word like trust, I think is really important. This expression, trust that the universe is friendly, is Albert Einstein. And that takes it to a totally different level. You know, some of you started in the absolute. Some of you have gone to the physical, and yet we live in the physical. And it's in the physical that Tate needs to trust his grandmother. Now, fortunately for him, he has a very trustworthy grandmother. But all the children in this world, even though she would take them all on, don't belong to Susan. And so there are many of us in this world who have to live in a world where we don't have any trust. The children who are locked up down on the border without their parents have lost trust. The Kurdish children have lost trust. Some of our partners in something like NATO have lost trust in the United States. Trust requires that we keep our word. Trust requires that we live in integrity. And while we can be very absolutist, the truth is, living in this physical world, we have got to figure out how to rebuild trust. And despite the wonderful fact that Marianne Williamson is running for president, I'm not sure that we get to apply all of the New Thought principles to regaining trust in the real world. So we have to rebuild trust one step at a time. We start with a scenario where someone or something has betrayed us. And then we have to learn to retrust. We have to learn to rebuild. It's interesting because we talk about faith a lot. We mentioned Advent earlier. The first Sunday of Advent is about hope or faith, depends which one you're working on that year. And so we talk a lot about faith. But faith itself is built on trust. And if you can't trust, you can't have faith. And then there's that other word that's a tad pesky. Hope. Can you live in a world without hope? So say, talk to me.
I can't.
Why not?
Why live? I have to live in a world of hope.
So our need to live in a world of hope is made much more difficult when we can't trust. Do you see how they're all tangled in together? And really sitting with how we rebuild trust is an important aspect of a spiritual life. My experience is it's very easy to be spiritual on Sunday morning. I do it well. But who are you on Tuesday morning? Who are you when all the things you've trusted, all the precepts you've built your life on, all of the individuals that you have loved and trusted aren't there? I don't necessarily mean they've left the planet. I simply mean they are not there for you. How do we move into recovering our hope? How do we move into rebuilding our trust? And we aren't doing it from up here. We're doing it from down here, folks. We're slithering around on the floor, on our serpent's belly. And all those words that ministers speak are just sort of like this. Yeah. Easy for you to say. Because the trick is to live it. The trick is not to speak words. The trick is to live it every single day and pick the hardest days when you're standing there saying, calling all angels, walk me through this one. Don't leave me alone. From that place, slithering around down there, is where the struggle, and I'm not going to tell you it's anything but a struggle, the struggle to rebuild hope from that place is one of the hardest journeys. Now, we can watch what takes us there. You know, if watching the 6 o'clock news does not elevate your consciousness, maybe you don't watch the 6 o'clock news. But if you watch the 6 o'clock news and it causes you to slither around on your belly, how do you come back from that? What is your formula? What is your go-to place for coming back from slithering around on your belly on the floor?
I have a go-to place.
Okay, perfect.
And I've had lots of experience, and sometimes it takes me a while to remember that this go-to place is that I own my own choices. I own what feelings I choose to have. I own how I'm going to respond, and in that I feel empowerment, and that's where I get my hope.
Okay. And Gretchen?
I think when I've been at my rock bottom, finding one little thing in my world I can be grateful for, which is can be very difficult, but it can be just the most minute thing, and that helps kind of switch over my mindset and my heart, and saying, okay, I don't have all this stuff, I don't have that, blah, 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 list goes on forever, but I have this one thing.
Can you share with us one thing that you have used? Now, it doesn't have to be the one thing you've used, but just something that worked once?
I've used nature, things in nature. One time I was driving down the street and I was really brokenhearted about the loss of my son. And he used to play viola. And driving down my street, at that time there was a family on the street, or on the corner of the street that lived there. And the boy was outside in his yard practicing his stringed instrument. And I was like, thank you. I needed it at that moment.
And in that moment, what did that mean to you? What was the right connection?
It was a sign that everything was going to be okay.
So I had an interesting experience last night. I joined Deb and Judy at Kirtan. And the young woman present was sharing some Hindu stories. And, you know, the Hindu stories we would quite righteously call myth. And she was telling them like they were stories, once upon a time. And, you know, there were 27 different women, and the young man was supposed to go to one of each of them every night. and he liked one better than the other one, so he was and that's an awesome story. But if I were to have stood up and said, for me to think about hope, I'm going to go to Noah, and I'm going to think about the sign of the rainbow that came, that signified that there would be hope and that the Lord would never flood the universe again. A sign of hope. I have a friend in Canada whose significant other had developed Alzheimer's and died from Alzheimer's. And every time she finds a cottonwood leaf, which you know is in the shape of a heart, she takes it as a sign that he's with her. A sign of hope. We have to look for our own signs of hope. But it's useful to know what brings that flutter, that rise, that lift, that joy to your own heart. Because a cottonwood leaf might do nothing for you. A rainbow may do nothing for you. But a young child playing a viola may touch your heart. It's a unique situation, but it's a universal problem. Every single one of us in this room has been hopeless about something, and yet you're all here. So my guess is that you have found something that helped you rise up to have hope and trust again.
Isn't this about looking for the miracles?
Yes, and it's almost too big a word. When we use the word miracle, people have so much energy around that word. It's like I rarely use the word God anymore.
Well, I'm referring to an experience, one of the experiences I had, and when I'm talking about looking for a miracle, is walking along a concrete sidewalk and finding a little leaf with this tiny little periwinkle flower with a golden center, and stopping and looking at that, and to me, that's a miracle.
So
It's the
for you, that's a hope. That's a miracle. It may not do diddly squat for Judean. So part of what I'm saying is you got to find your own, and we have to be without judgment about each other's miracles. I don't get to go into judgment. My friend in Canada, my friend from college, name is Susan too. I don't get to be in judgment about every picture of a cottonwood leaf that Susan posts on Facebook. Some of them are ragged and weather beaten, some of them are fresh, some of them are green, some of them are gold. Susan posts a lot of them. But that's her touchstone, that her significant other still loves her even though he's not walking around in human form. You need your touchstone. You need to find it. And it's really important that we give up definite articles. This is the symbol for hope. This is the miracle. This is a miracle. This is a symbol for hope, so that we've given everyone room for their symbol of hope. And as clergy, we have been deficit at that in a lot of circumstances. We have used too many definite articles and not enough indefinite articles. Because if there are 15 of you in this room, I didn't really count, but if that's how many of you there are 15 different recipes, and we don't get to judge each other's. We don't get to say, this is the way it's done. This is a way you could possibly do it. It worked for me. It might work for you. I have all these words on these pages that don't have anything to do with what I'm really talking about. Do I even care? Nah. It's a nice talk, but it's not this talk. Go on.
So, thinking about trust, how do you rebuild?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do about it?
Mm-hmm.
What has always worked for me, the best way, is to forgive and stop reliving it. If I'm hurt by mistrust,
Mm-hmm.
and I continue to think about that mistrust, I'm getting hurt every time I think about it. But I forgive and say, that's it. I'm not going to forget. I wouldn't forgive. I'm not going to trust them like I did before for a long time. But if I forgive, I'm not forgiving them, I'm forgiving me. I don't have to mess with it anymore. I can move on.
So, Jack, can you help me? What are you forgiving yourself for?
I am forgiving myself for holding the hurt, holding the hate. I'm sorry, I feel this way. I forgive myself for feeling this way, because I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to go on with my life with them, and maybe we're going to continue to be friends. It won't be what we were, but we can continue to be friends, because I'm not going to live that hurt every day.
So I'm wondering, and I don't want to put anything on you that's not yours. Don't take it.
Okay.
Is it possible that what we're forgiving ourselves for is that we trusted them in the first place?
Very much so. Very well could be.
So isn't it fascinating that what is required to live in this world is hope and trust? And in order to be in a relationship with somebody, we have to trust them. We have to wholeheartedly give them our heart and trust them. I give you my heart. And if you hurt me after I have given you my heart, I have to forgive myself for giving you my heart. Does that make sense to you?
Don't hold it against myself.
You know, I have 2 former husbands. I know. I have been a slacker most of my life.
I got you beat, sister.
She's still young.
But I didn't give my heart to anyone, either of my husbands or a few others that I didn't marry. I didn't give my heart to anyone expecting to be hurt. I never started there. I love you, please hurt me. That is not my thing. But every time we give ourselves to someone, they then hold the potential to hurt us. Now, it's on a human level. It's not on an absolute level. But on a human level, they have absolutely the potential to hurt me. And yet, if I don't give them my heart, we can't be in a relationship.
Better to love and lose than never love at all.
I've heard those words. So on a more minor level, anytime anyone stands in front of you to talk, they are offering you that gift. Here I am. I'm vulnerable. You can say whatever you want about me, but I'm here to speak to you today. And some of you, bigger you than just you, are going to return that trust and love to me, and some of you aren't. But I still have to stand here and give you that kind of love and vulnerability to have a relationship, even as a minister, that works. So every speaker who stands in front of you is offering you their heart. And how's that returned to the people who stand in front of you in vulnerability? So I happen to notice there is a clock over there. It says the same thing that my watch says. So it's possible that despite whatever words were on that paper, this is the time for us to pause for a moment. Do you have a meditation here? I'm sorry, I've forgotten. I thought you did. All right. We usually do. So I invite you to trust me, and if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, says, faith is the substance of things not seen, as does the New Testament. We can't see trust. We can't see hope. And yet they are the elements that we must build our lives on. Breathe into that. And find your own path, your own way, your own steps, your own miracles that will allow you to rebuild trust with those with whom you have lost trust. Find your own miracles. For any loss of hope and trust you might have in our leaders. Find your own miracles to trust and regain faith and hope and trust in the institutions in your life that may have let you down. It's a journey. And it's a journey much like the journey between here and Denver. There are mountains and there are valleys. There are twists and turns and curves. And yet that journey is one that will sustain you with every breath you take, right up until the very last one. We have an opportunity to do all that is ours to do. We have an opportunity to use each experience we have in our life to build our own spiritual reservoir, our own way to have the reserves that we need to make it over the next mountain. When we know that ultimately we're safe. We are a divine facet of God, and oneness with the universe is our future, by whatever name we call that. We trust that the universe is friendly, that we are one with all life, that we are one with the divine, that we are a facet of that divine, unique, unrepeatable, contributing to the whole. taking a deep breath, we pause for a few moments of silence to allow that to unfold within us in exactly the right and perfect way. Ultimately, the answer to that question is a personal one. And each of you has an opportunity to create your own answer. The opportunity is to never stop considering the question. To choose to live in the question of how you live in trust, how you live in hope, and how you regain that trust and hope in the moments when you have lost them. Where to find that kernel, that seed, that tiny spark that allows you to reconnect with your divinity and with your own divine purpose. And because we know there are answers for each of us, we are grateful. And we simply say thank you. Thank you. And so it is, and so we let it be.